What if Hollywood's golden age wasn't so golden behind the scenes? From Errol Flynn's scandal-soaked mansion to Charlie Chaplin's courtroom chaos, the stars we idolized were often more dangerous off-screen than on. In this deep dive into 20 most dangerous old Hollywood actors who were out of control, we're pulling back the curtain on the legends whose real lives were fueled by obsession, scandal, and destruction. Think you know old Hollywood? Let's explore the truth together. Stick around and see just how dark fame can get. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn wasn't just a Hollywood heartthrob, he was chaos wrapped in charm. With a striking face, a smooth British drawl, and a wild streak as bold as his on-screen sword fights, Flynn captivated millions. But behind the curtain, his real life was darker than any pirate tale he ever filmed. By the 1940s, his name was splashed across headlines, not for blockbuster hits, but for explosive Hollywood scandals. In 1942, Flynn faced serious allegations involving underage girls. Though he was ultimately acquitted, the court of public opinion never really let him go, and the rumors only grew wilder from there. Stories surfaced of hidden peepholes and secret mirrors built into his mansion, tools, some claimed, that he used to spy on unsuspecting guests. Flynn didn't deny his reckless appetite. In his own words, "I like my whiskey old and my women young." That quote alone became his legacy and his curse. Whispers also linked him to international smuggling and wartime espionage, with rumors of dangerous connections overseas. Nothing was ever proven, but wherever chaos stirred, Flynn's shadow wasn't far behind. By the time he hit 50, years of hard living had taken their toll. He died surrounded by whispers and myth, an icon whose fame couldn't outrun his demons. And believe it or not, the chaos starts here, because up next is a Hollywood funny man with a life story that's anything but a joke. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin was a towering figure in early cinema, a legend whose silent films made the world laugh through tears. With his bowler hat and iconic moustache, he created magic on screen. But behind the scenes, Chaplin's personal life was filled with unsettling contradictions. He had a repeated tendency that raised eyebrows, pursuing relationships with much younger women. At 35, he married 16-year-old Lita Gray, and their union quickly spiraled into turmoil. Gray would later reveal that Chaplin was controlling and emotionally manipulative. The picture-perfect clown had a darker side few saw. Then came a courtroom storm. Actress Joan Barry accused Chaplin of fathering her child. Even though scientific tests said otherwise, the judge still ordered him to pay support. The press had a field day, and the scandal became front-page news across America. Chaplin's troubles didn't stop at romance. In the heat of the Red Scare, he was branded a political threat, allegedly sympathizing with communist ideals. While abroad in 1952, the US government made a bold move. It banned him from re-entering the country. Chaplin, once a king of American cinema, never officially became a US citizen. "I remain just one thing and one thing only, and that is a clown," he once said in a now iconic quote. But even celebrity interviews couldn't mask the complexity behind that public image. Before we dive deeper into Hollywood's darkest secrets, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And don't go anywhere, because the mystery behind George Reeves' tragic end is one you won't want to miss. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum had a kind of untouchable swagger, cool, cynical, and rebellious to the core. He didn't just play tough guys on screen, he was one. And in 1948, that bad boy image went from fiction to fact when Mitchum was arrested at a Hollywood party for lighting up something he shouldn't have. Back then, a charge like that could crush a career, but Mitchum, he just shrugged it off. "It's just like being busted for holding a beer," he told reporters. He spent time behind bars, but instead of ruining him, the scandal skyrocketed his fame. The public didn't reject him, they were drawn to him. In true Hollywood gossip fashion, danger only made him hotter. But Mitchum didn't stop there. He was infamous for brawling in bars, clashing with co-stars, and mouthing off to directors. He lived without filters, and somehow it worked. His most legendary quote, "The only difference between me and my characters is I don't shoot people." And it stuck because it felt like the raw truth. While others in Hollywood hid their chaos, Mitchum wore his recklessness like a badge. He walked the line but never crossed it too far. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando wasn't just a legend, he was a force of nature that shook Hollywood to its core. From the moment he stormed onto the screen in A Streetcar Named Desire, the industry would never be the same. Brando brought raw emotion, unmatched intensity, and an energy that couldn't be contained. But behind the brilliance was a man in chaos. Volatile and unpredictable, Brando's personal life was a whirlwind. He was known for romantic entanglements with both women and men, turbulent marriages, and a temperament that could flip in an instant. He once admitted, "I'm not sure I'm a human being." That quote revealed more truth than he realized. His private life was scarred by heartbreak. His son, Christian, was involved in a tragic incident that shook the family. And years later, his daughter Cheyenne's devastating end pushed Brando into a spiral he never truly escaped. Off-screen, he challenged the Hollywood machine, defying studios, refusing to conform, and famously turning down his Oscar for The Godfather. His political stands were as bold as his performances, but his behavior often alienated even his closest allies. Co-stars called him both a genius and a nightmare, warm one moment, ice cold the next. Brando lived as if constantly battling himself. His performances were unforgettable because they were fueled by real, unresolved pain. He was the face of a new era, but also a warning sign of the turmoil that lurked beneath the glamour of Hollywood scandals. And if you think Brando was dangerous, wait until you hear about the next star whose past was so disturbing, the studio tried to keep it locked away for decades. Clark Gable. Clark Gable was the ultimate symbol of old Hollywood charm. Dashing, magnetic, and seemingly untouchable, he played Rhett Butler like he was born for the role, and the world adored him. But behind that golden smile was a man surrounded by whispered secrets and carefully buried scandals. One of the most chilling stories came from actress Loretta Young, who co-starred with Gable in Call of the Wild. Years later, she revealed a painful chapter that had been kept hidden for decades. During filming, something happened that changed her life forever. She later gave birth in secret, disappeared from the spotlight, and returned pretending she had adopted a child. The truth, too explosive for the times, was buried under layers of studio silence. Gable's off-screen life was just as chaotic. His reputation as a relentless womanizer was no secret behind the scenes, with numerous affairs, some involving married women, swept under the rug. MGM's publicity machine worked overtime to keep his image clean. The studio fixed everything back then. One publicist once said, "You just had to keep the press fed and the police out of it." To fans, Gable was Hollywood royalty. But those closest to him knew the truth. He lived in a world of secrets, cover-ups, and emotional wreckage. His charm may have dazzled the cameras, but behind the curtain he was a storm that left lasting damage, an enduring icon of Hollywood gossip, at its most carefully controlled. And just when you think you've heard it all, the next star's battle was so fierce, not even Katharine Hepburn could drown out the noise. Spencer Tracy. To the world, Spencer Tracy was the image of calm authority, a classic Hollywood icon with the face of a hero and the talent to match. But away from the cameras, his life was anything but composed. Tracy lived a double life. Publicly, he was a devoted Catholic family man who never divorced his wife. Privately, he spent over 20 years in a hidden relationship with Katharine Hepburn. While the press painted them as close companions, those in the inner circle knew they were far more than that. Still, Tracy's inner torment kept them from ever finding peace. Behind the scenes, Tracy's drinking was more than a habit, it was a storm. Colleagues learned to brace themselves when he vanished for days at a time, returning suddenly as if nothing had happened. On set, he could be warm and magnetic one moment, then cold and volatile the next. His outbursts, emotional and physical, left cast and crew walking on eggshells. One director famously said that working with him felt like walking on glass with bare feet. Yet the studio system turned a blind eye. Tracy's brilliance was a box office guarantee, and Hepburn often stepped in to shield him from fallout. But the price of maintaining the illusion was heavy. In private, he battled relentless guilt, spiritual conflict, and deep emotional struggles, trapped between faith, fame, and a life he could never fully claim. Tracy passed away in 1967, just 2 weeks after wrapping his final film. He once admitted, "I had demons, and they never let me go." His story remains one of the most tragic and complex chapters in Hollywood scandals. a reminder that even legends carry burdens the spotlight can't erase. John Barrymore. John Barrymore was born into American acting royalty. With the Barrymore name behind him and a voice made for Shakespeare, he wasn't just an actor, he was theatre's golden child. In the 1920s and 30s, no one rivaled his power on stage or screen. But as the curtain rose on his fame, a darker addiction was already waiting in the wings. At first, Barrymore's lifestyle was the stuff of glamorous Hollywood gossip, champagne-soaked nights, elite parties, and razor-sharp one-liners. But the charm faded fast. The drinks got stronger, the nights got longer, and soon the great Hamlet of his generation could barely remember his lines. The decline was devastating. Barrymore missed rehearsals, arrived on set in no condition to work, and started taking roles far beneath his talent just to scrape by. Once revered, he became a running joke in the very town that once bowed to his genius. Friends tried to help, but Barrymore made it hard. He would vanish without a trace, only to be found weeks later, disheveled, penniless, and lost in a crowd of strangers. His once grand home dissolved into chaos. One producer admitted, "John Barrymore was the only man I knew who could outdrink his own legacy." But it wasn't just the alcohol. His behavior grew more reckless with time. Disruptive stunts at parties, shameless flirtations, and open insults aimed at the industry's most powerful. By the end, Barrymore had burned every bridge. The fame, the money, the admiration, it was all gone. When he died in 1942 at just 60, it wasn't as a legend, but as a cautionary tale. The man once crowned as theatre's king had been undone by his own self-destruction. Fatty Arbuckle. In the golden age of silent film, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle was a true giant, both in talent and popularity. Known for his slapstick genius and his close friendship with Charlie Chaplin, Arbuckle ruled the comedy scene. But in 1921, his world crumbled in just one weekend, and Hollywood would never be the same. At a lavish hotel party in San Francisco, something went horribly wrong. By the next morning, young actress Virginia Rupp had fallen gravely ill, and the finger of blame pointed straight at Arbuckle. What followed wasn't just a legal battle, it was an all-out media storm. Headlines branded him a monster. Church groups condemned him. The studios, they ran for cover, dragged through not one but 3 headline-making trials. Arbuckle was eventually acquitted. In fact, the final jury went so far as to apologize, stating there was not the slightest proof of guilt. But by then, the verdict that mattered most, public opinion, was already sealed. Arbuckle's name was blacklisted across Hollywood. His films were pulled. His reputation became a cautionary tale, a poster child for Hollywood scandals and the darker side of fame. Even under a pseudonym, work was scarce. He tried to rebuild, directing obscure projects, taking what little he could get. But the stain of the scandal never fully faded. Ironically, just hours after signing a new film deal that might have revived his career, Arbuckle died of a heart attack in 1933. A tragic ending to a story that shook the foundations of the film industry. His fall didn't just ruin a man, it reshaped Hollywood. In response to the uproar, the industry introduced the Hays Code, its first major set of moral guidelines to prevent another public meltdown. George Reeves. George Reeves was once the face of truth and justice, America's original Superman. On screen, he stood for everything heroic. But behind the scenes, his life unraveled into one of the darkest Hollywood scandals of the era. In 1959, Reeves was discovered lifeless in his bedroom, a single gunshot wound to the head. Authorities labeled it a suicide almost immediately, but the whispers in Hollywood told a far different story. Reeves had been entangled in a volatile relationship with Toni Mannix, the wife of a powerful MGM executive, rumored to have dangerous connections. When Reeves tried to end things and move on with a younger woman, his world shifted. Friends say he became paranoid. He felt watched, followed, even hunted. Some close to him believed he wanted to leave the industry altogether. Others feared he had uncovered something he was never meant to know. That fateful night, guests were downstairs when the fatal shot rang out upstairs, yet no one saw anything. The scene was bizarre. No fingerprints on the weapon, no burns, and far too many unanswered questions. Was it a tragic end by his own hand, or was someone else pulling the strings? Some whisper it was jealousy, others a cover-up. Decades later, mystery still surrounds the man who once symbolized hope. As one journalist put it, Superman was supposed to save people, but no one saved him. On a scale from 1 to 9, how suspicious do you think George Reeves's death really was? 1 equals sign, no mystery at all. 9 equals sign, 100% cover-up. Drop your number in the comments and tell us why. Was it a tragic ending or something far more sinister? Rock Hudson. To millions, Rock Hudson was the dream, Hollywood's ultimate leading man. With his tall frame, striking looks, and effortless charm, he ruled the silver screen through the golden age of cinema, but behind the perfect smile was a secret that defined an entire generation of Hollywood gossip. In an era where authenticity could cost a man everything, Hudson was forced to live a double life. The studios crafted his image with surgical precision, even arranging a staged marriage to his secretary, just to silence the whispers. He couldn't drop the act, not in interviews, not at parties, not even at home. Close friends guarded his truth like a state secret. Relationships had to be hidden in shadows. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Hudson once confessed, "I just want to be loved, but I have to pretend to be someone else to earn it." Then in 1985, the illusion shattered. Hudson was diagnosed with a mysterious illness that carried a heavy stigma at the time. His condition was no longer something he could conceal, and overnight the world saw him differently. The news rocked America. The press didn't just report it, they exploded it. Some fans turned away in disbelief, others stood by him, now seeing the weight he had carried for decades. But one thing was clear. Hudson's honesty in the final chapter of his life forced Hollywood and the public to face truths it had long ignored. His death that same year marked the end of a career built on perfection, but his legacy became something deeper. A man who dared to show the world who he truly was, even when it cost him everything. Tab Hunter. Tab Hunter was the poster boy of 1950s cinema, blonde, charming, and clean-cut. To the public, he was the dream. But behind the carefully staged smiles and red carpet poses was a man living in quiet agony, and in reality, Tab Hunter was trapped. At a time when the truth could end a career, he was forced to play a role off-screen just as much as on. Studio executives built his image from the ground up, arranging photo ops with starlets and orchestrating fake dates to keep the rumors buried. Paparazzi were fed only what the studio approved. The message was clear: be what we tell you to be, or lose everything. Hunter was constantly on edge. In the early 1950s, he was briefly detained at a private gathering, something that, if leaked, could have obliterated his rising stardom. "I couldn't be who I was," he later revealed, "not in that system, not back then." He spent years living 2 separate lives, Hollywood heartthrob by day, hidden self by night. As the golden era faded, so did the spotlight. But Tab Hunter didn't vanish. Decades later, in a powerful wave of celebrity interviews and in his own memoir, he finally told the world what it cost to be a star in chains. The audience was stunned, not by scandal, but by the sheer weight he had carried in silence. One critic put it best: Tab Hunter wasn't just a matinee idol, he was a prisoner of the system who lived long enough to escape it. Tony Curtis. He was the golden boy of the silver screen, Tony Curtis, with his dazzling smile and blockbuster roles in classics like Some Like It Hot and Spartacus. On screen, he was irresistible. Off screen, he was chasing thrills that would eventually cost him everything. Curtis wasn't just famous, he was addicted to being adored. His life became a whirlwind of luxury, late nights, and excess. Known for his countless romantic flings, Marilyn Monroe reportedly among them, he openly bragged about conquests in the hundreds. But what started as Hollywood gossip soon turned into something darker. By the 1970s, Curtis was sinking fast. He fell deep into substance abuse, famously saying, "If you remember the 70s, you weren't really there, and I barely was." Directors stopped calling, producers dreaded working with him, his personal life in shambles. 6 marriages, 6 children, and a legacy of broken relationships. Even Jamie Lee Curtis, his daughter, spoke out about his absence as a father. One daughter was reportedly cut out of his will entirely, and still, even in the wreckage, Tony Curtis never lost that old-school charm. In celebrity interviews, he came across as brutally honest, fully aware of the damage he'd caused. "I turned my life into a circus," he once said, "and sometimes I forgot who the ringmaster was." Mickey Rooney. Before there were mega franchises and social media fame, there was Mickey Rooney, the child superstar who owned the box office in the 1930s and 40s. As the face of the Andy Hardy films, he made millions before he could legally toast to his own success. At his peak, he was the highest paid actor in America, but the fame that built him never let him go. Rooney's real life was a tornado of chaos. 8 marriages, yes, 8, each one a tabloid-worthy storm. From beauty queens to starlets like Ava Gardner, his love life was fueled by jealousy, conflict, and shattered illusions. And behind closed doors, things were just as turbulent. He blew through fortunes with high-stakes gambling and found himself owing debts to people no one wanted to cross. As time passed, the drama didn't fade, it just changed shape. In his later years, Rooney stunned fans by accusing his own stepson of betrayal and financial exploitation. The same Hollywood that once lifted him up became the backdrop to some of the most heartbreaking Hollywood scandals of his life. On set, he was a firecracker, unpredictable, intense, and often impossible to manage. Directors never knew if they'd get brilliance or burnout. His mood swings were legendary, and his appetite for the party scene left many around him drained. "I never had a childhood," he confessed. "I just had a career." And that career never really ended. Into his 90s, Rooney was still taking roles, still giving interviews, still performing, clinging to the spotlight as if stepping away meant confronting the emptiness fame had tried to hide. Mickey Rooney wasn't just a cautionary tale, he was the caution, wrapped in talent, trapped by legacy. James Dean. James Dean didn't need a long career to become a legend. Just 3 unforgettable films and a life lived on the edge. With his smoldering glare and raw energy, he captured the soul of a generation spiraling into chaos. But beyond the screen, Dean's reckless passion for speed made him a real-life danger to himself. He wasn't just acting like a rebel, he was one. Obsessed with racing, Dean pushed his machines and his luck far past the red line. Motorcycles, fast cars, back roads, he craved adrenaline. Friends watched in fear as he ran red lights, tore through turns, and laughed about near disasters. More than once, someone whispered that he didn't care if he lived or died. And maybe he didn't. "I live every day like I'm going to die tomorrow," he once said. "And maybe I will." That eerie quote came true in 1955 when his Porsche, nicknamed the Little Bastard, met its end on a California highway. Dean was just 24. His sudden death didn't end his story, it exploded it. Whispers of secret relationships, old Hollywood power games, and even a so-called curse tied to the wrecked car became fuel for decades of Hollywood gossip. The truth? Still unknown. But the myth of James Dean only grew stronger. He didn't just represent youthful rebellion, he defined it. And like so many rebels before and after, his story ended far too soon. Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty wasn't just a Hollywood icon, he was a storm in a suit. With movie star looks and effortless charm, Beatty didn't follow the Hollywood spotlight. He commanded it. But behind that polished smile was a man with a reputation that made people uneasy for good reason. His love life became the stuff of legend. Rumors claimed he'd been with thousands of women, co-stars, models, even figures tied to political circles. Whether those numbers were real or inflated didn't matter, everyone believed them. But Warren Beatty wasn't just reckless in romance, he was equally unpredictable on set. Directors called him brilliant but impossible. If a script didn't fit his vision, it got rewritten. If a scene felt wrong, production paused until it met his standards. He could bend a project or a person to his will with just a phone call. That grip on control wasn't just obsession, it was how he built an empire. Then came the plot twist no one saw coming. In the 1990s, Beatty settled down with actress Annette Bening, the bad boy of Hollywood choosing stability. It shocked everyone. But by then, the legend was already written. One actress once said, "I've never known anyone more charming or more dangerous." Beatty didn't crash and burn like so many others. He mastered the game, balancing power, charm, and calculated chaos. His story isn't just another chapter in Hollywood scandals, it's a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous stars are the ones who never lose control. Mabel Normand. In 1922, the glamorous world of early cinema was rocked by one of the most chilling Hollywood scandals of its time, the unexplained death of director William Desmond Taylor. Found lifeless in his Los Angeles home, the case sent shockwaves through the industry. And at the heart of the storm, comedic actress Mabel Normand. Though she was never arrested or officially charged, Normand had visited Taylor just hours before the tragedy. That alone was enough for headlines to explode with wild speculation. The public couldn't help but wonder, did she know more than she let on? Police were unable to uncover any concrete proof against her, but that didn't matter to the gossip-hungry tabloids. They dug into her past, reviving old controversies and painting her as a symbol of scandal rather than stardom. As her name was dragged through the mud, her once rising career began to crumble under the weight of suspicion and whispers. Despite her undeniable talent and charm, Mabel Normand would never fully outrun the dark cloud that hovered after that night. Her legacy remains a haunting reminder of how quickly fame can turn in the face of mystery and Hollywood gossip. Paul Michael Kelly. In 1927, actor Paul Kelly's life and career spiraled into chaos after a violent clash with fellow performer Ray Raymond turned fatal. The heated dispute quickly escalated, and when Raymond later died from his injuries, Kelly found himself at the center of a courtroom drama that would grip the nation. Charged with manslaughter, Kelly's trial became a media frenzy, fueling one of the earliest Hollywood scandals to ever stain the silver screen. Prosecutors painted him as reckless and dangerous, and the jury ultimately agreed he was sentenced to 2 years behind bars in San Quentin. Most actors would have vanished into obscurity after something so damaging. But Kelly's story took an unexpected turn. Against all odds, he returned to the spotlight once released, this time more seasoned, more intense, and surprisingly well received. Critics praised his performances, and slowly he rebuilt his reputation. Still, that dark chapter could never be erased. Paul Kelly's name remains etched in the annals of Hollywood history, not just for his acting, but for how dangerously close his real life came to destroying his career. Robert Blake. In 2001, Hollywood was rocked when actor Robert Blake, famous for playing tough guy Detective Beretta, was named the prime suspect in the shocking death of his wife, Bonnie Lee Bakley. She was discovered in their parked car just steps from the restaurant where the couple had dined that night. Blake's story raised eyebrows immediately. He claimed he had returned inside to retrieve a handgun he'd forgotten, only to come back and find her fatally wounded. As the investigation deepened, prosecutors pointed to a troubled marriage full of tension and mistrust. They argued Blake had both motive and opportunity. Yet in a dramatic twist, the criminal court found him not guilty, citing lack of evidence to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But the story didn't end with the verdict. In a separate civil trial, Blake was found liable for Bonnie's death and was ordered to pay millions to her family. The conflicting outcomes ignited public debate and became a case study in how justice can take two very different paths in criminal and civil court. This wasn't just a Hollywood scandal, it was a story that blurred the line between fiction and reality, leaving a legacy of doubt, debate, and broken fame. It's now day 2 in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, and today, all eyes were on the prosecution's star witness, his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. The case first caught fire after disturbing footage surfaced of Diddy and Cassie in a Los Angeles hotel hallway, a key piece of evidence that helped bring everything to light. Now, for the first time in 6 years, from 2018, Cassie came face-to-face with Diddy in the courtroom. Her testimony? A gripping and deeply personal account of what she says went on behind closed doors during their 10-year relationship, a side of the music mogul the public never saw. Why the Cassie video is so important as evidence. If Cassandra Ventura hadn't filed her lawsuit back in November 2023, this entire case might have stayed buried. But everything changed when that hotel hallway footage, allegedly showing her being physically attacked by Sean Combs in 2016, came to light. That video became the turning point. Cassie's name dominated the courtroom yesterday, and now she's taking center stage as a witness for the prosecution. Let's be honest, this entire case could stand or collapse based on her testimony alone. When she entered the courtroom, Sean Combs briefly looked in her direction, but she didn't return the glance. Instead, her focus occasionally shifted to her husband, Alex Fine, who sat silently in the courtroom offering quiet support. Alongside him were members of her family and her legal team, present but visibly tense. Today, Alex, Cassie's husband, also came to court to quietly support his wife during an incredibly difficult moment. He arrived in a simple yet neat outfit, walking with purpose through the courthouse doors, avoiding the glare of media cameras. His face was serious, his gaze steady and silent, as if holding back a storm of emotion beneath the surface. Inside the courtroom, Alex took a seat in the back row, saying nothing, making no unnecessary gestures, yet his presence alone carried more weight than any spoken words. In the tense atmosphere of the trial, his appearance was more than a gesture of love. It was a quiet declaration. She is not alone. Then came the moment that stunned everyone in the room. In a calm, composed voice, she began to recount deeply disturbing experiences, describing what she endured at the hands of Sean Combs, starting at just 22 years old. The details were so explicit, so unsettling that they couldn't be repeated on air. Yet she delivered them with chilling clarity, matter of fact, almost as if the trauma had become routine. So what has she revealed so far? For starters, she's visibly pregnant, nearly 9 months along, and yet still chose to come forward to face him in court. That, in itself, speaks volumes. Before we dive deeper into what Cassie bravely revealed in court, tell us, what country are you watching from? Drop your flag in the comments and stay with us until the end to see how her testimony could change everything. Cassie, now 38 years old, told the jury she was in a relationship with Sean Combs for a decade. A relationship marked not only by a significant 17-year age gap, but by control and fear. She admitted that throughout their time together, he introduced her to intimate situations that made her uncomfortable. When asked to describe what the relationship was really like, she didn't hold back. There were violent arguments, she said, that would usually result in some sort of physical abuse, dragging, different things of that nature. It was a haunting moment and one that set the tone for what could be the most pivotal testimony of this entire trial. Cassie didn't hold back. She testified that when arguments turned physical, the violence escalated, saying that if she was already on the ground, Sean Combs would stomp on her head. Ventura told jurors, quote, "He would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down." Then came one of the most unsettling parts of her testimony, a term the prosecution asked her to explain, the so-called freak-offs. In her words, it basically entails the hiring of an escort and setting up this experience so that I could perform for Sean. She described scenes where Combs would sit and watch, giving instructions as if directing a show. Over time, she said, it stopped feeling like a relationship and started feeling like a job. Her claims were further supported by the earlier testimony of a male performer who said he had been hired by both Cassie and Combs to take part in one of these staged encounters, all while Combs watched. Cassie Ventura told the court she felt she had little choice in the matter. She feared that if she didn't comply, Sean Combs might retaliate or worse, find ways to blackmail her. Throughout her testimony, there were moments when she had to pause and take deep breaths, clearly overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Combs sat quietly at the defense table, hands resting in his lap, showing little emotion. This was the first time the two had come face to face since 2018, and the tension in the courtroom was undeniable. Emotions ran high, and with prosecutors warning that her testimony could be lengthy and intense, everyone braced for what's next. She opened up about the tangled, overpowering nature of her relationship with Sean "Diddy" Combs, and revealed the shocking reality behind what he called freak-offs. The first time she was exposed to one, she recalled feeling confused, nervous, but admitted, "I loved him very much." That emotional attachment, she said, was used against her. According to her testimony, Combs held enormous control over her life, not just emotionally, but through intimidation. She claimed he recorded her during these disturbing encounters and hinted that he kept those videos as leverage. He had many resources to do that, she said, clearly shaken by the fear that those recordings could be made public at any time. In court, she was shown a now infamous 2016 video. a hallway incident that went viral. She confirmed the shocking truth. It happened directly after one of those so-called freak-offs. That detail matters because while the defense argues this was simply a case of relationship violence, she's painting a much darker picture, one involving calculated control, fear, and a pattern of manipulation behind closed doors. The defense is pushing a very different story. According to them, this wasn't blackmail, and definitely not coercion. They're painting the relationship as mutual, even beneficial. They argue that Cassie was just starting her music career and saw Sean Combs as a powerful ally. He helped produce her first record, gave her opportunities, and they claim she knew what she was stepping into. From the defense's point of view, this was a partnership, not a power play. They'll likely tell the jury that without Combs, Cassie wouldn't have had a career at all. But the prosecution is fighting back hard. They admit things may have started out with excitement and ambition, but that spark, they argue, quickly faded as Combs took full control, not just of her professional life, but her personal one too. What began as a chance at stardom soon spiraled into something much darker. The jurors are being hit with some truly jarring testimony, and the defense is eager to use any cracks they can find. One key point of contention: the male dancer's recollections. He told the court he heard Sean slapping her and once saw Combs dragging her. Yet he also kept working for Cassie, exchanged friendly texts, and even joined in those infamous freak-offs. That contradiction lets the defense push its central question: was Cassie a trapped victim or an equal participant? It's a razor-thin line, and the jury is being asked to balance images of late-night glamour against moments of outright fear. One of the most unsettling claims from the prosecution is that whenever Cassie began to pull away or question the relationship, Combs allegedly used a chilling tactic, threatening to leak private videos that could ruin her reputation and end her career. But the defense isn't backing down. They argue that Combs never had control over those recordings at all. In fact, they claim the only person who actually possessed the footage was Cassie herself. That's a key point the defense hammered home in court yesterday, directly challenging the idea that Combs used those tapes as leverage. The question for the jury now is who really held the power, and what exactly was being used to keep Cassie in line. What became painfully clear was the overwhelming imbalance of power. Even if she agreed to certain things at times, it didn't change the fact that he held all the control. This wasn't just a relationship. It was a dynamic where one person had all the influence and he knew exactly how to use it. It's unlikely that the prosecution plans to simply coast through lesser, inconsequential witnesses at this stage. With two more alleged victims yet to testify and one of them reportedly missing, the urgency is clear. The practical concern is getting Cassie Ventura, referred to as Victim 1, on the stand before she gives birth. Her testimony is critical, and time is limited. Strategically, the prosecution appears to have opened the trial by establishing a strong foundation through corroborating witnesses. This approach helps strengthen Cassie's credibility before she testifies. When she first filed her lawsuit in November 2023, her allegations were considered shocking and, to some, even hard to believe. But everything changed after CNN released surveillance footage that appeared to back up one of her claims. That single video shifted public opinion. People began to believe not only that specific incident, but also the broader pattern of abuse she alleged. In court, the prosecution has begun to walk Cassie through her testimony. In one exchange, she said, "I thought we were monogamous." When asked if their relationship was public, she replied, "No, I was his artist, also his family, his children," clarifying that the relationship was private at the time. When asked who was publicly linked to Combs, she answered, "Kim Porter." As for how he treated her back then, Cassie simply said, "We had fun." The tone and sequence of the prosecution's case suggest that they're building toward a powerful emotional and factual climax, likely centered around Cassie's full testimony, while working against logistical and strategic pressures behind the scenes. While there is video evidence that acts almost as a silent witness in the case, the prosecution is expected to bring in several additional witnesses who can speak to the nature of Sean "Diddy" Combs' relationship with Cassie Ventura, including potential staff members like a chef and chiefs of staff. These witnesses may provide details about the environment around the alleged abuse and broader behavior patterns. However, serious legal challenges remain for the prosecution. One major question raised by the defense is, where is the conspiracy? Racketeering charges under the RICO Act require at least 2 or more people working together in a coordinated effort. The prosecution has mentioned people who allegedly helped facilitate certain activities, yet none of these individuals have been criminally charged. This opens the door for the defense to argue that no actual enterprise existed. The first major hurdle for the prosecution, then, is to overcome the argument that what happened was simply a series of consensual but morally questionable acts, not coordinated criminal activity. The second and arguably bigger hurdle is convincing the court that this case rises to the level of a racketeering conspiracy under federal law. Even if Diddy is proven to have abused Cassie over a decade-long relationship, and even if that abuse was severe and exploitative, that alone may not meet the legal definition of racketeering. This will be a critical battle for the prosecution moving forward. As the courtroom fell silent, the prosecution opened with a bold strategy, laying the foundation for one of the most serious accusations possible: criminal racketeering. Their mission? To convince the jury that what happened behind the scenes of Diddy's glamorous empire wasn't just chaos, it was calculated, coordinated, and criminal. Cassandra Ventura, when asked to describe Combs' day-to-day life, she didn't hold back. He had all these assistants. He could get things done. He traveled quite a bit, she said, painting a picture of a man constantly in motion, surrounded by a machine built to serve him. Then came a photo. Cassie confirmed it showed her and Combs at a New York club on Halloween, sometime around 2007 or 2008. But it wasn't just about the picture, it was about the pattern. The prosecution pushed further, questioning her about Combs' unpredictable mood swings and shifting behavior. They weren't just trying to expose a bad attitude, they were constructing a narrative of control, manipulation, and a lifestyle that may have enabled a much darker pattern. He's a powerhouse, multiple companies, endless resources, a small army of employees at his command. With that kind of reach, prosecutors argue, he could easily assemble an illicit operations and racketeering network. And that's the crux of the drama. Is this a groundbreaking entertainment and fashion empire, or the polished front for a covert criminal machine? By the way, was Cassie Ventura a powerless victim or an equal partner inside Diddy's empire? Type 0 if you think she was a victim, swept up by his power. Type 1 if you believe she was a partner, fully in on the ride, and tell us why you chose your side. Bombshell weakness exposed in Fed's case. One of the most disturbing elements of the Sean Diddy Combs case is the twisted line between victim and accomplice. Some of the people closest to him, most notably Cassie Ventura, may have been both. That uncomfortable duality raises serious legal and moral questions. Were they willing participants, or were they trapped in a cycle they couldn't escape? The legal stakes for Sean Diddy Combs are sky-high and potentially life-shattering. If found guilty of racketeering conspiracy, he's looking at a maximum sentence of life behind bars. The same goes for the trafficking-related charges, which come with a minimum of 15 years. On top of that, there's the charge involving the transportation of individuals for questionable purposes, carrying a possible 10-year sentence. But not all charges may stick. Some legal analysts say proving racketeering or illicit operations beyond a reasonable doubt could be an uphill battle for prosecutors. However, the transportation charge might be easier to nail down, especially if there's solid evidence that Combs coordinated travel, knowing exactly what those trips would be used for. If that's the only charge that results in a conviction, it would be a partial win for the defense. In that case, Combs could avoid the harshest penalties, possibly serving a reduced sentence or walking free with time already served. That outcome wouldn't erase the scandal, but it might allow him to keep his fortune and public stature. Even so, the damage to his image and the questions surrounding his legacy might be irreversible. Cassie Ventura's latest courtroom account landed like a thunderclap. On the stand, she described a life ruled by fear, both physical and mental. When asked about the impact, she said, "Greatly. The next thing I knew, I was getting hit in the face." She recalled Combs ordering her to watch mouth and change face, painting a picture of non-stop control. Prosecutors argue those moments show a calculated pattern that extends far beyond bruises. They need that pattern, coercion, manipulation, domination, to cement illicit operations and racketeering charges. Defense teams everywhere are paying attention. In other high-profile trials, lawyers claim prosecutors are blurring the line between toxic love affairs and federal crimes. Can expensive gifts, paid vacations, and jealous behavior really count as illicit operations? In Combs' case, prosecutors insist the answer is obvious. They say he brought in paid companions for infamous freak-offs, covered their travel, and footed the bill. If any of that involves pressure, state-to-state movement, or cash, it checks every box for trafficking, regardless of the defense's spin. A viewer raised a key question. What about male victims? So far, this case seems to center on female testimonies. But there's been speculation, and even lawsuits, suggesting that male individuals were also affected. While these claims exist in civil court, they haven't surfaced in the current criminal trial. Which raises another question. Was that intentional? Some legal analysts believe prosecutors may be narrowing their focus deliberately. Including allegations involving minors, for instance, could complicate the case. Once a minor is involved, there's no legal room for any argument about consent, which would dramatically raise the stakes for the defense. But instead of building an overly broad case, the prosecution may be playing it strategically, focusing on the most clear-cut charges first to ensure a stronger chance of conviction. Whether that tactic proves effective remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: the scope of accusations against Sean "Diddy" Combs stretches far beyond what's currently unfolding in the courtroom. Although the defense admits that Sean Combs was violent, they argue that violence alone doesn't prove exploitation of individuals. However, the prosecution says the violence is central to the case. It's what kept Cassie silent for years, too afraid to come forward. This is common among domestic abuse survivors, who often struggle to process what happened and fear the consequences of speaking out. Violence plays a critical role in this case because it demonstrates the extent of control Sean Combs had over Cassie Ventura. It highlights the toxic environment she lived in, trapped under his power, wealth, and emotional dominance. Now that she's finally speaking up in court, it's clear that what she endured was not just a dysfunctional relationship, but a pattern of coercion and abuse. Her courage to testify shows her strength and resilience after years of silence. During today's proceedings, the courtroom reviewed text messages between Cassie and Combs. The defense argued that the messages indicate a consensual relationship. However, Cassie provided context, explaining that fear was behind many of her responses. She said she felt she had to comply in order to avoid worse consequences. Experts are expected to testify later in the trial to explain how victims often behave in ways that appear consensual on the surface when in reality they are driven by fear, manipulation, and long-term psychological trauma. As for why Cassie waited until 2023 to file her civil lawsuit, experts noted that every victim processes trauma differently. In Cassie's case, it likely involved fear, emotional manipulation, financial dependence, and concern about her public image. These factors often delay victims from coming forward, sometimes for years. But now, she's speaking out, and that alone is a powerful statement. This trial could change how the world sees Sean "Diddy" Combs forever. Do you think he'll be convicted of racketeering? Comment yes if you believe justice will be served, or no if you think he'll walk free. Sean "Diddy" Combs and Cassie Ventura's relationship began in the mid-2000s, when she was a rising R&B star signed to his Bad Boy Records label. What started as a professional connection quickly evolved into a long-term, high-profile romance that played out in the public eye for over a decade. Let's rewind to 2006. Cassie had just dropped her debut album under Diddy's own Bad Boy Records. With a smooth blend of R&B and pop, she seemed destined to follow in the footsteps of rising stars like Ciara and Rihanna. Discovered by hitmaker Ryan Leslie, who'd worked with names like Beyoncé and Britney Spears, Cassie appeared to have it all: talent, timing, and a powerful team behind her. But then, silence. Despite signing a massive 10-album deal, only one ever saw the light of day. She disappeared from the charts almost as quickly as she arrived. Fans were left waiting, expecting more music, more performances. What they got instead were red carpet appearances, rumors of studio sessions, and years of mystery. By the time she resurfaced musically with a Nicki Minaj feature 6 years later, the momentum was gone. Publicly, Diddy claimed she was always in the studio. But the albums, they never came. Behind the glamour and red carpet appearances, however, their relationship was often described as intense, controlling, and turbulent. Despite their on and off dynamic, Cassie remained closely tied to Diddy both personally and professionally until their quiet breakup in 2018. Not long after the breakup, she began dating Alex Fine, a personal trainer and professional bull rider. Their relationship moved swiftly but sincerely, rooted in mutual respect and emotional safety, something many fans noted was in stark contrast to her past. In 2019, Cassie and Alex announced they were expecting their first child. That same year, the couple married in an intimate ceremony, surrounded by close friends and family. Since then, Cassie has fully embraced her role as a mother and wife. She and Alex now have 2 daughters and are currently expecting their 3rd child. Alex often shares heartfelt tributes to Cassie on social media, calling her the best mama and expressing how much he cherishes the simple moments of their family life. Career-wise, Cassie has stepped away from the spotlight. Though she once seemed destined for music superstardom, she chose peace over pressure. Occasionally, she shares wellness-focused content or behind-the-scenes glimpses of her life, but her focus today is clear: family, love, and healing. In the wake of recent legal proceedings involving her past, many now see Cassie not just as a former pop star, but as a survivor, a mother, and a woman who found strength in walking away and rebuilding her life on her own terms. Today, Cassie took the stand and testified under oath, marking one of the most pivotal moments of the trial so far. Dressed modestly and appearing visibly emotional, she faced the courtroom with a quiet strength. Her voice trembled at times, but she remained composed as she recounted deeply personal and painful experiences. Every word she spoke drew the room into a heavy silence. Attorneys, jurors, and spectators alike listened intently. Cassie's testimony wasn't just a recounting of past events. It was a moment of reclaiming her voice in a space where silence once ruled. Her appearance on the witness stand carried not just legal weight, but a powerful emotional resonance that underscored the human cost behind the headlines. 2 witnesses testify as Diddy's trial begins. Diddy on Trial podcast. Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie Ventura's relationship began in the mid-2000s when she was a rising R&B star signed to his Bad Boy Records label. What started as a professional connection quickly evolved into a long-term, high-profile romance that played out in the public eye for over a decade. Let's rewind to 2006. Cassie had just dropped her debut album under Diddy's own Bad Boy Records. With a smooth blend of R&B and pop, she seemed destined to follow in the footsteps of rising stars like Ciara and Rihanna. Discovered by hitmaker Ryan Leslie, who'd worked with names like Beyoncé and Britney Spears, Cassie appeared to have it all: talent, timing, and a powerful team behind her. But then, silence. Despite signing a massive 10-album deal, only one ever saw the light of day. She disappeared from the charts almost as quickly as she arrived. Fans were left waiting, expecting more music, more performances. What they got instead were red carpet appearances, rumors of studio sessions, and years of mystery. By the time she resurfaced musically with a Nicki Minaj feature 6 years later, the momentum was gone. Publicly, Diddy claimed she was always in the studio. But the albums, they never came. Behind the glamour and red carpet appearances, however, their relationship was often described as intense, controlling, and turbulent. Despite their on and off dynamic, Cassie remained closely tied to Diddy, both personally and professionally, until their quiet breakup in 2018. Not long after the breakup, she began dating Alex Fine, a personal trainer and professional bull rider. Their relationship moved swiftly but sincerely, rooted in mutual respect and emotional safety, something many fans noted was in stark contrast to her past. In 2019, Cassie and Alex announced they were expecting their first child. That same year, the couple married in an intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. Since then, Cassie has fully embraced her role as a mother and wife. She and Alex now have 2 daughters and are currently expecting their 3rd child. Alex often shares heartfelt tributes to Cassie on social media, calling her the best mama and expressing how much he cherishes the simple moments of their family life. Career-wise, Cassie has stepped away from the spotlight. Though she once seemed destined for music superstardom, she chose peace over pressure. Occasionally, she shares wellness-focused content or behind-the-scenes glimpses of her life, but her focus today is clear: family, love, and healing. In the wake of recent legal proceedings involving her past, many now see Cassie not just as a former pop star, but as a survivor, a mother and a woman who found strength in walking away and rebuilding her life on her own terms. Today, Cassie took the stand and testified under oath, marking one of the most pivotal moments of the trial so far. Dressed modestly and appearing visibly emotional, she faced the courtroom with a quiet strength. Her voice trembled at times, but she remained composed as she recounted deeply personal and painful experiences. Every word she spoke drew the room into a heavy silence. Attorneys, jurors, and spectators alike listened intently. Cassie's testimony wasn't just a recounting of past events. It was a moment of reclaiming her voice in a space where silence once ruled. Her appearance on the witness stand carried not just legal weight, but a powerful emotional resonance that underscored the human cost behind the headlines. Once celebrated as a king of the entertainment world, Sean "Diddy" Combs now stands accused of crimes so serious they could put him behind bars for the rest of his life. He's denied every allegation. On this first day of trial, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Jurors were called in, cameras flashed outside, and inside, Combs sat, composed, yet under the full weight of federal charges. The 55-year-old music mogul, known for his chart-topping hits like Bad Boy for Life and Can't Nobody Hold Me Down, now faces charges that go far beyond the world of entertainment. Among them, racketeering, trafficking-related offenses, and conspiracy linked to the underground movement of individuals. Combs has pleaded not guilty, but as opening arguments begin, it's clear this isn't just a trial, it's a full-blown reckoning. Prosecutors wasted no time painting a chilling picture of the secret life they say Sean "Diddy" Combs led behind closed doors. According to their explosive claims, Combs used his fame and power to force women into disturbing high-pressure gatherings he reportedly called freak-offs, multi-day, drug-fueled events where no one was allowed to leave, and silence was demanded through fear and intimidation. At the center of it all is Cassie, whose story has become the most talked-about piece of this case. In a now infamous hotel surveillance video from 2016, jurors watched in stunned silence as footage appeared to show Combs chasing Cassie through a hallway, knocking her to the ground and kicking her. That footage was among the first pieces of evidence presented, raw, visual, and unforgettable. The courtroom fell into dead silence as a security guard who responded to the scene described Combs as having a devilish stare and confirmed that Cassie had visible injuries, including a purple bruise around her eye. But the shock didn't stop there. Another man testified that he was allegedly paid to take part in disturbing activities involving Cassie, while Combs reportedly watched and gave humiliating instructions. These allegations added a grim layer to the prosecution's argument that control, manipulation, and fear were tools Combs used repeatedly. From start to finish, opening arguments were intense. Both sides spoke about intimate behavior in shocking detail, but the prosecution's version painted a picture far more sinister than anyone expected. But here's the catch: this trial isn't about whether Sean Combs was violent. It's about whether that violence was part of something bigger, an organized system of control, intimidation, and exploitation. And while the defense tries to separate personal misconduct from criminal conspiracy, the prosecution is preparing to go even deeper in the days ahead. These weren't just actors, they were time bombs wrapped in tuxedos and charm. From secret affairs to explosive trials, the truth behind these old Hollywood legends proves that fame often hides the most dangerous flaws. As the cameras rolled, their lives unraveled in ways even the best scripts couldn't imagine. These Hollywood scandals didn't just shake studios, they rewrote the rules of stardom. So which of these stars shocked you the most, or do you think even darker secrets still lie buried in Tinseltown? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we're just getting started. Involved in a physical altercation with a woman.